Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Frankly Speaking Sports. What a great night we have in store for you tonight. If you are a Carolina Panther football fan, this is definitely a show you want to watch tonight. We're going to recap yesterday's preseason loss to the Indianapolis Colts, and we're going to get a little bit into detail about this game as well. For those of you that are new to Frankly Speaking Sports, you're a Carolina fan, we ask for interaction. Go ahead, leave messages, leave comments. Right now, you can only do that if you're on YouTube Live. If you're not on YouTube Live and you watch the show on a recording and you say, oh my goodness, I would love to get involved, it's easy, folks. Just go to YouTube, subscribe, it's free. And the next show we do, and we'll be doing a lot of them, you'll be able to interact, whether it's commenting or calling on the phone. If you're watching on YouTube Live right now between 9 and 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday night, then guess what, folks? You are on live listening to our show, and the show is going to break down like this. We're going to talk about some things. Then around 9:15, we're going to be joined by former Pittsburgh Pirate World Series champion catcher Ed Ott, and he's going to talk about his career in Major League Baseball. And then right after that interview, we'll get back into talking about the Carolina Panthers. A lot of Carolina Panthers stuff. If you're not familiar with my show, folks, I tell it like it is, and I want to hear the same from you as well. So please go ahead, join in. Like I said, a lot of you may not be familiar with the show, so it may take a couple shows for you to get involved. So if you are listening on the replay, please feel free to go ahead and leave comments, and we'll get into we'll see those comments, and we'll get some feedback. But we're going to start out first. We're going to make sure our guest got the message tonight. We always do that. I'm not sure if he already got it, but we did send him the link, so hopefully he will look. If not, we'll just talk Carolina Panther football. And we're going to start off, a lot of people are talking about, what's going to happen here in Carolina. We have a new quarterback. We have Sam Darnold. And, we'll talk about Sam Darnold, and we'll talk about P.J. Walker if you want. We'll talk about Will Grier a little bit later in the show. But before everybody in Carolina starts worrying about these position players, the one thing you're missing the boat on, folks, is you got to first decide, damn it, do we got the right coach? And, I don't know Matt Rule that well, okay? I watched Matt Rule, of course, coach in college, but I am not, I do not know a lot about Matt. But from what I'm seeing about Matt, he looks very indecisive. And, the one of the things that got me yesterday, I listened to some of these press conferences, and he said, we weren't prepared. You weren't what? You weren't prepared? You are the damn coach. It's your job to prepare these guys for the football game. If you're not prepared, that is your entire job as a coach. They teach you that back in Business 101. If you're going to be successful, you got to prepare and you got to plan. And, Matt Rule did not do any of that going into this game. It's the most ludicrous thing I have ever heard from a coach. You didn't prepare. Oh, my goodness gracious, folks. If this is what we have to look forward this year, we are going to be in trouble here in the Carolina area. But I'll tell you what, okay? They asked him, why didn't you use a silence cadence when it got loud? Why didn't you go to a silent call from the quarterback? Because we weren't prepared. How the hell aren't you prepared? You are a head football coach in the National Football League. I understand it's new for you, but you had a whole year under your wing, and you still don't know how to prepare for a game. I mean, that is totally ludicrous, totally ridiculous that you can't go ahead and prepare for a game. That's number one. Number two, you got two positions right now that there should be some competition involved in. As a Carolina Panther fan, you should see competition. Position number one should be the quarterback position. Yes, PJ Whitaker, I thought did a very good job yesterday as far as competing for a backup position. He is in no way, shape, or form a starting quarterback in the NFL. He was 10 of 21, 161 yards, and a touchdown. Give him credit where credit was due. Made one mistake that I know of where he possibly could have ran the ball in, but instead didn't. And that's just learning. But from a perspective, he is not. They should have brought they basically handled Sam Darnold, this position, and said it's yours. Okay, Sam Darnold comes from a background where he played with the New York Jets, and he was awful. He was awful. For those of you people that don't understand the word awful, he sucked. He was terrible. Okay? And yet they're giving a quarterback who's unproven the helms without bringing somebody in that can compete with him and challenge him. Like you look in New England where Mac Jones, the new quarterback, is being challenged by Cam Newton. Andy Dalton and Justin Fields over in Chicago with Nick Foles. They did it to Tua. They did it now in Washington with Heineke. We're bringing in Ryan Fitzpatrick. There is no competition here. How do you go ahead and compete for a spot when you have no one to compete with? There's got to be some competition involved. You can't be that soft with these guys, Matt Rule. You got to get some competition going. And the other position is kicking, okay? You got a guy named Joey Sly. He was 4 for 5 yesterday, 0 for 1 in extra points, but I believe the extra point didn't count because of where the ball was lined up when they kicked it. But nevertheless, where is the competition? You can't be handing people jobs in the NFL. You got to make them compete. The only way that they're going to feel any pressure on themselves and get better and develop and be able to motivate themselves is through competition. And I don't understand it. I will never understand what is going on. Now, I will tell you, Carolina fans, you should be proud because you got a damn good team here if it is led the right way by the coaching staff. I saw a lot of good things, and I know we saw some bad things. Obviously, the penalties were not the greatest things in the world to see yesterday. And we're going to be talking about different things. We are about 5 minutes away from having Ed Ott on. I'm just going to look here. And he did get the link, so Ed should be on momentarily with us. And then what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to go ahead, interview Ed, and then after the interview with Ed, what we're going to do is we're going to break down the game yesterday. We're going to hear from Marcus Haynes. We're going to hear from Terrace Marshall Jr., the rookie, and we'll hear from head coach Matt Rule as well. We'll also show you some highlights, so don't go away. We got a lot of Carolina Panthers stuff that we're definitely going to talk about when we are finished with our interview. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor, thrill, and pleasure to bring in was a catcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're in the 1979 World Series championship. Let's welcome in catcher Ed Ott. Ed, how you doing tonight? Hold on one sec, Ed. Let me see if we can get you. It looks like you're muted. I'll unmute you. Can you hear me now? Nope. Let's see. Okay, you have to unmute yourself. That's the only thing. Your microphone is muted. That's what it says. Up there you go, Ed. Try talking now. Yep,
Okay.
You're good, Ed. Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Ed?
Yes, I can hear you fine, Larry.
All right, buddy. Now I hear you perfect. That was all. See, you did good coming on all by yourself. I knew you could do it.
No, I needed my wife.
The truth comes out. There it is.
Oh, boy.
Hey, Ed, let me ask you something, which was, something that always amazed me about you. And, I watched you growing up. I wasn't born to 66. So I got, when I started seeing you, it was early 70s, maybe when I got into baseball and all that. But the one thing that always surprised me is that you were a left-handed hitter, but you threw righty. How did that all come about?
It was one of those things. I was like Roger Maris, my idol. He threw right-handed and batted left-handed. And it was one of those things where my father batted cross-handed and the rest of my brothers all batted left-handed. So I thought, well, I'll just jump on that side of the plate and make it easy.
Well, yeah. Now, let me ask you this. This was also interesting. I find a lot of interesting things, and I knew you well growing up as a player, of course. And you were a star third baseman, I believe, in high school. And when you finally got drafted, you switched over to outfield because they switched you over to that. And then there was a time, I believe, as your career was beginning at the major league level, they had asked you to go back down to become a catcher. Why don't you tell us about the transition to catcher? And were you up for it, or was it something you didn't want to do?
Well, it was one of those things where I was drafted out of high school and I was a third baseman. Well, the first day I got in camp in Bradenton, Florida, they told me I was an outfielder. I said, I never played the outfield a day in my life. And they said, you do now. So I spent 3 years in A-ball playing the outfield. Then I went from A-ball to AAA. I skipped over AA and I played 2 years at AAA. And then after the second year of AAA, plus coming to the major leagues during the course of the season as an outfielder, Harding Peterson, the minor league director or the major league GM, came to me and said, Ed, we'd like you to try catching. And I said, catching? I said, I'd never had the catching gear on a day in my life. And he said, well, we would like you to try catching instead of being an outfielder. So I came home. And I was married to my first wife at the time, and I was sitting there watching a football game, and I looked at my wife, and it said, I think I just found out 3 reasons why I should switch to catching. And she goes, what's that? I said, Al Oliver, Dave Parker, and Richie Zisk. So I made the transition. I came to spring training the following year as a catcher. It took me about 2 weeks to figure out that I was supposed to keep my eyes open when the hitters swung. So towards the end of spring training, Harding Peterson brought me into the front office and said, Ed, we're going to send you to AA to learn how to catch. And I said, Pete, let me put it to you this way. I said, I'm either going to AAA or I'm going home to learn how to catch. And he said, well, what's the reasoning behind that? And I said, well, number one, I said, in A-ball, you're not a catcher, you're a goalie, because these pitchers have no idea where they're throwing the ball, and you're blocking the ball and jumping all over trying to catch it. And then I said, at AA, at least you're a part-time goalie and part-time catcher. But I said, at AAA, I said, you have major league pitchers that are being sent down and pitchers that are supposed to be sent up to the major leagues. So wouldn't it make it easier for me to learn how to catch at the AAA level than it would be at the AA level? And he said, well, let me think about it for a couple of days. And a couple of days went by. He called me back in his office. And he said, okay, we decided that we're going to send you to AAA, but if you can't handle it, we're going to send you back to AA. And I said, Pete, that's all I asked. So it was one of those things where we ended up the whole year at AAA. And Gary Carter and I ended up being the all-star catchers that year. And the following year, I came to the big leagues as a catcher.
Now, Ed, let's talk about that 1979 season because it was amazing. And the one thing that really, you had an unbelievable, I think your best season as a catcher that year, batted 273, 7 homers, 51 RBIs, and I think you were second to Gene Tennis in fielding percentage. So a great, great year by you. But the amazing thing about the Pirates that you really don't see today. They had a few guys that can hit the long ball. Let's not, they had Stargell, they had Parker, they had Milner. You had guys, but this team can flat out hit. It does not just home runs, but they had Madlock, they had Stargell, they had Stennett. I mean, everybody on that team could hit.
Well, it was amazing because most of us had our best years that year. Tim Foley had one of his best years. Steve Nicosia and I as catchers had our best years. Phil Garner had a great year. And of course, Stargell, Parker, they had their years. And then you had Bill Robinson, Omar Marino stole 70-some bases that year.
Yep.
So it was just one of those things that we were called the family, and that's exactly what we were. We were probably the closest knit 25 members of a ball club that you'd ever want to see in the history of baseball.
Yeah, and you mentioned Omar with the 70 stolen bases. Then you had two other guys on the team with 20 stolen bases. Then you had even Bill Robinson, I think, had 16 to 20 stolen bases. I mean, the game was a completely different game than we see today. I mean, you're talking right there over 120 steals between, more than that even, between those four guys.
Well, it was amazing because that's basically the way the game was taught to be played back then. It was get on, try to steal second. If you didn't steal second, the next guy gets a base hit, and you go from first to third. Nowadays, it's not so much. There's not so much emphasis put on driving in runs and doing what's best for the ball club. Nowadays, it's everybody wants to hit the home run, and it's one of those things where it's kind of an ugly game now. But, back then we played the game the way the game was meant to be played.
And talk about your World Series experience. I mean, you had never been in the World Series before. You get to the World Series, had a terrific World Series, batted 333. I think you had like 3 RBIs. And of course, most importantly, you guys ended up winning the World Series. Talk about your experience and what it was like for you to play on that big stage.
It was just one of those things where we got to the World Series. We swept Cincinnati in Cincinnati, and that was something that hasn't been done for years with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. We went into the World Series with the idea that we were just going to play our game, and we started the first game, and Bruce Geeson gives up a home run in the first inning, and they end up, I guess, scoring 4 runs in the first inning. And it was one of those things where I think we lost the game 4-3. And then we came back the second game, and then I led off the 8th or 9th inning with a single and ended up scoring the winning run on Manny Sanguillen's pinch hit base hit to right field. Then we were tied 1-1. We went back to Pittsburgh, and we ended up losing game 3, losing game 4, and then we were down 3-1. And it was just one of those things where we all looked at each other and said, well, we have nothing to lose. Let's go out there and just play the game that we can play. So we ended up winning game 5, then game 6. And when we won game 6, it was all over. The World Series was ours to have.
What was it like in the city of Pittsburgh, and how did they embrace the Pirates?
Oh, it was fantastic because that's the way we played. We played like we were Hard Knock baseball ball club. And Pittsburgh loves that. Between the Steelers and us, it's one of those. It's an iron city. It's a hard-nosed city. It's a worker city. And we went out and played the way that they'd love to see players play the game, the way the Steelers do.
Now, Ed, I know it comes up a lot in conversation when people are interviewing you and stuff, but I got to tell you, for the first 13 years of my life, I lived in New York. Okay, I lived on Long Island. I was a big Mets fan growing up. Now, I don't need to tell you that my favorite player happened to be at that time Felix Millan, okay? And I see a sticker in there. So you can imagine my feelings after that August 12th day as a little kid. But, I know it gets brought up a lot, and it's an unfortunate situation. I mean, you never go to play a game thinking of a brawl and hurting somebody, and it's never intentional. But, my question to you about that whole deal isn't what happened. You can see what happened. But my question was, and it might sound weird, but have you ever talked to Felix after that day?
No, I never have, but a lot of people don't understand exactly what took place during there. It was a ground ball that I slid into second base, and I just barely caught his foot enough so he could not continue with the double play. And as I get up, when I slide, I always brush my legs off. And when I brushed my legs off, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. And he had the baseball in his hand, and he hit me in the mouth with the baseball. And I was a wrestler my whole life since I was knee-high to a grass cutter. So what took place next, within the next second, was a reaction of what I was grown up to be, and that was a wrestler. And then I happened to pick him up and slam him to the ground. Unfortunately, he ended up breaking his collarbone, and he was unconscious for a while. But what a lot of people don't understand is that I also broke my collarbone during that period of time. But the problem is 5 days later, I was playing again with a broken collarbone. So it's one of those things. It's not the happiest thing that I was ever glad of doing. It was unfortunate for both of us. And it was one of those things that I just have to live with. And I get probably about one or two questions about that per week on the internet. It was just one of those things. I'm not proud of what took place. I'm sure that Felix feels sorry for what he did. And I know darn well that I actually feel sorry for what ended up happening to be the consequences to him.
Sure. Completely understand that. Now, I want to talk about your transition to coaching. After you hurt your collarbone, you tried to come back with the Angels. Things didn't work out. You retired from baseball as a player. Now, was coaching something you thought about while you were playing, or is it something where your buddy Art Howe came to you after your career and said, listen, I have a position, would you like to do it?
Well, actually, after I got with the California Angels and signed a free agent contract, I had back-to-back rotator cuff surgery, and that's when I retired. And then my third year of the contract, California asked me if I would go up to their AAA ball club, which was Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and help coach the young kids because they heard that I worked so well with the young players. And I said, absolutely, I owe you something after 2 years of not being able to play and getting paid for it. So I went into coaching there with the option the following year. Pittsburgh asked me to become a manager in the minor league system, in which I jumped at. It was one of those where I just went through a divorce, and I had a meeting with Harding Peterson in Pittsburgh. And down there, he was there, and he asked me, he says, would you consider coming back as a player, as being the 25th player on our roster? Because I was a left-hand hitter. I played the outfield. I played the infield. I couldn't catch no more because I couldn't make that snap throw. So I told him, I says, well, Pete, I says, how much are you going to pay me? And he says, we'll pay you about $250,000 a year and sign a 2-year contract. And I looked at Branch Rickey, which was the minor league director, and I looked at Branch and said, Branch, how much does a minor league manager's job pay? He goes, $16,000. And I looked at both of them, and I looked at Branch, and I said, Branch, I'll take the managing job. And the reason I did that is, did I need the money? Absolutely, 100%. But there was an incident earlier in my career where one of the players was a veteran on the ball club, being a left-hand hitter, and he was always used by Danny Murtaugh as a left-hand pinch hitter. And I said to myself, I said, I will never put myself in that position to take a young player's job. And that's why I devoted myself to go into the coaching and managing. And then when Art Howe got the job down in Houston, Phil Garner called me and said, Ed, why don't you give Art a call? He said, your name's being shuffled around down here as being a catching instructor. And I said, sure. So I called Art, and I went down to Houston and met with him and Bill Woods, the general manager. And Art, the first thing that he said to Bill Woods, he says, Bill, he said, if you don't want to hear Ed's answer, don't ask him the question. It might not be the answer you want to hear, but he's going to tell you the answer the way he feels. And at that time, they both decided to give me a coaching job with the Houston Astros. And I enjoyed that for quite a few years, but it was one of those things, it was just time to move on.
And I got a question for you that, it might not take a little thinking, and it might, but let's say you were coaching today and a young player, 20, 21 years old, comes up to you and says, Coach, I was curious if you can answer a question for me. How would you explain the game of baseball when you played it compared to what I am seeing today?
Well, I think the first thing I would say, as I said, the worst thing that ever happened to the game of baseball is the radar gun. Because there's so many kids out there that throw 87, 88 miles an hour with control. And I says the problem nowadays is that all they want to see is 95, 96 miles an hour, and they don't care where it goes. Matter of fact, my first year of managing with the Pittsburgh Pirates, we were in spring training, all the coaching staff and minor league managers, and they were talking about an individual, a player, and the one coach stood up and said, well, this kid can throw a ball through a brick wall. And I just sat there for a second. I said, can I ask a question? And they said, well, yeah. And I said, how many times does he hit the wall? It's not how hard you throw. It's whether you can throw strikes with the accuracy that you're supposed to have at the major league level. And that, I think, is probably the part of the game that's really went wrong, is now all of a sudden everybody wants to throw 96, 97 miles an hour, and they have no idea where the ball's gone. The second one is...
And I was just going to ask you that, Ed. I was just going to say that to you. You've been a catcher, and I was always taught, and I'm not saying this because you're on the show and you are a catcher, but I was always told the catcher is the smartest guy on the field. He can see everything in front of him, what's going on, call, defensive shifts, everything. But my question to you is, the game of baseball, everybody in the major leagues has the ability to hit a fastball. Why do they concentrate so much on speed when they should be concentrating on location?
That's a good question. I wish I knew that. If I did, I'd be the smartest guy in the world. But remember, catchers were always told that it was the tools of ignorance. It wasn't the tools of ignorance. It was the tools of intelligence, because like you said, you had to run the ball club. And it's one of those things now where I watch games on TV now, and I watch this new era of baseball when they put on the shift. They have three guys to one side of the infield to a left-hand hitter per se, and all of a sudden the catcher's setting up outside. Well, you can drive 18 Mack trucks through the left side of the infield. Why are you pitching the guy away from the shift? You have to pitch into the shift, not away from the shift. And that's why you see guys now bunting and going to left field. To right field as a left-hand hitter, because there's nobody over there to catch the ball. It's a game that's really changed, and I'm not so sure it's changed for the best, but it's one of those things that they're getting paid a lot of money, for doing what they're doing. And it's one of those things where the other thing I can't understand is evidently no player can think for themselves anymore, because every time there's a pitcher change or a hitter change, everybody's got to reach in their back pocket and bring out their card and how they're going to pitch.
Yeah, that's right.
It's, my God, can't they think for themselves anymore? Do they have to rely on a little cheat sheet card? That's like taking a test in high school with a little cheat sheet.
I had both of them were your teammates. I had Bill Madlock, and I also had Mike Eastlaw on my show before. And one of them, I think it was Mike, that said that, in his opinion, the shift would have never worked back then because the hitters were too good and they would know how to go the other way. Where players today, they'll leave the whole side open and they won't adjust like the players would back when you played. Do you agree with that?
Well, back when we played for one run per inning. If you can score 9 runs during the game, you're going to win. Nowadays, everybody plays for the crooked number. They play for 3-4 runs an inning. That's why you see, games go nothing into the fourth, and then all of a sudden somebody scores 5, and then somebody scores five more to tie it up. But it's just back then we played for 1 run every inning, and how'd you do that? You did it by execution. If they were going to put on a shift with us back then, trust me, 80% of us would have went the other way. Stargell and Parker, no, they would have still pulled the ball if they had to. But the rest of us would have went the other way, and we would have put up big numbers back then against this shift.
Yeah. Now, as a catcher, what is your opinion of this rule they're trying to implement? They're studying it in the minor leagues of moving the pitcher's mound back another foot.
They might as well move it back 4 feet. They can't throw strikes now.
Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter. The idea of the pitching, like you said, is all about location. So, like you said, if they can't hit it now, they're not going to hit the target, obviously, with a foot back.
No, absolutely not. And they're still going to be able to throw, they have to throw strikes with their fastball. And when they do, that's the ones that get hammered.
And I asked a lot of the Pirate players that played back in the 70s this question. I probably know the answer already, but I like to hear it anyway. One of my favorite players growing up was your teammate Dave Parker. Just incredible outfielder, incredible hitter, unbelievable arm. Should Dave Parker be in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. He's probably one of the top 3 best players that I've ever played with or against at the major league level. Dave could do it all. He could run, hit, throw. He was basically a 5-tool guy. And Dave and I were both signed the same year in 1970. I was the 23rd round and he was the 21st round. So it was one of those things where we both battled ourselves. We learned how to play the outfield position because the first year that Dave was at the minor league level in 1970, after he got drafted out of high school, they made him wear a helmet in spring training. We were that bad of outfielders. We were terrible. And both of us were fortunate to play with a manager named Tom Sapple in Monroe, North Carolina. Tom Sapple is the one person that we owed our outfield career to because he taught us how to play the outfield. He says, always think one runner ahead. Always think about what you're going to do of a slow ball hit to you, slow ball hit to the right, slow ball hit to the left, hard hit ball hit right at you, hard hit ball to the right and left, who was on base, where were the best base runners, So, and always back up bases because there was nowhere else to do. If there was a ball hit to left field and I was playing right field, I had to back up second base. If the ball was hit to right field and Dave was like playing left field, he had to back up third base. So it was one of those things that Tom Sapple and Dave Parker and I both owe him all the credit of learning how to play the outfield. But as far as talent-wise, Dave Parker is by far the top 3 that I've ever played with in my life, with or against.
A couple more questions. I'll let you run, Ed. I could have sworn, and correct me if I'm wrong, that one year, I thought it was one time. If it was more, tell me. You actually caught a no-hitter, didn't you?
No, I did not.
Okay, then I was wrong. Okay.
Johnny Dyer caught John Candelaria's no-hitter, and that was the only no-hitter while I was at Pittsburgh.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I thought it was you, actually. But my last question to you, who is, out of you catching, not that you ever seen now, but as a catcher, who's the best pitcher that you ever caught?
Oh, no question about it. Bert Blyleven. Bert Blyleven played for us in 1979.
Yeah, that's right.
Best pitcher. I mean, his curveball was ungodly. It was unhittable. I don't care if you're right or left. And I think if you go back to the Cincinnati, when we were playing Cincinnati in the playoffs in 79, Cesar Geronimo was batting a left-hand hitter, and we threw him a 2-2 curveball, and he buckled his knees for strike 3, and that was the end of the game. If a player can buckle a left-hand hitters with a curveball and you're right-handed, that's probably the best curveball in the history of baseball. Bert Blyleven, hands down.
All right, my friend. Well, listen, Ed, I want to first of all thank you for allowing me the pleasure and time to have you as a guest here on Frankly Speaking Sports tonight.
All right, my pleasure, Larry. Thank you very much for having me. Have a good night.
All right, Ed. Stay safe, okay?
I sure will. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, that was former catcher Ed Ott of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we got to the interview with Ed, we were talking Carolina Panther football, and we're going to continue to talk Carolina Panther football. And, first of all, I want to make sure everybody understands. When I look at this team in the NFC South Division, I honestly believe, and I always give my honest opinion, no BS, that this Carolina Panther team has a possibility of making a dent in this NFC South. I saw the game with some of them with the Saints. Hill didn't look good yesterday. Winston didn't look good yesterday. There is an opportunity for this team if they can play well. A team that lost 7 of 9 games last year by less than 7 points, they can make a dent in this NFC South. But it's got to be with discipline, it's got to be with leadership, and it's got to be with great coaching. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Matt Rule is a terrible coach. I do not know Matt well enough yet to go and say that. I'm just talking about some things that I have been seeing, okay? But when you look at this team, they probably have some of the best depth at wide receiver, tight end than any team in the league. Maybe the exception is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, okay? But as far as they go, they looked really good, some of these guys yesterday. And one of the guys, let's go ahead and first see a little bit of the highlight. Let me see. Let's look at P.J. Walker first. Throwing the ball, I think I have it right here for a touchdown here. Believe it was to Tommy Tremble, who I thought had a terrific game yesterday. And let's go ahead, and when you look at this breakdown, folks, of the of this play, great move by PJ to scramble away, run back towards the line of scrimmage, and get a touchdown pass into the end zone.
You don't get that jam on the Z. Walker trying to buy some time. No. Escapes Rochelle. Fires, catch, touchdown. Tommy Tremble, the rookie from Notre Dame.
That's right. And I'll tell you what, that Tommy Tremble kid looked real good yesterday. Looked really good. I was just talking about depth at the receiver position, and this Tommy Tremble kid looked good. I also want to make sure everybody understands as I look at my notes here, but I thought, people are being too hard on P.J. Walker. This kid is a backup. That's all he is. That's all they're using for. You don't see elite quarterbacks being backup quarterbacks in the NFL unless there are exceptions like a Nick Foles when he was with Philadelphia, maybe a Frank Reich when he was with the Bills when Jim Kelly was quarterbacking. But you don't see that. You don't see a quality back. Look what's going on in Tampa Bay if Tom Brady gets hurt. They have nobody there. Blaine Gabbert. Okay, P.J. Walker did well yesterday. He showed some moves. He made some mistakes, and that's a learning curve. That's where a coach takes him into the film room, shows him some of the mistakes he did, and they work with it. But the other thing you got to remember is the offensive line cannot continue to get penalty after penalty after penalty because you ruin the whole momentum of the offensive structure of the game when you keep getting penalties and big plays have to come back. I think they had, there it is. I did write that down. 10 penalties for 64 yards. Now, as far as Will Grier went as quarterback, wasn't really impressed. I loved Will Grier when he was with Florida, and then he went to, went on and transferred out, went to another college, did really, really good. I thought Will Grier was a great college quarterback. Hasn't looked good in the NFL since he's been in the NFL. But do you need 3 quarterbacks? Also remember, we talked about competition earlier. We need to see who's going to be available towards the end of preseason. You never know who they may sign and pick up based on what Coach Rule wants to do. The other guy everybody wanted to see was Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard had a long run of 59 yards. He was 70 of 80. Like I said, 59 of those yards came on 1 carry, but they got to see him. They got, a little bit of what he can do, but, these guys got to turn on the speed. They got to turn on the speed, and we have right here for you. Let's go ahead, and we thank the NFL and the Carolina Panthers for use of this video. Let's go ahead and take a look at this run by Chuba Hubbard. And the thing I liked about this is he bounced off one of his blockers or a defender, and then he was able to come around and continue the run. Let's go ahead and watch it.
At the end of the line, bottom side of the formation for the Colts. Hubbard, big play. I think he stopped him. Thongs away from the tackler, and now he could be off the races. Odom trying to chase him down. Rodgers there too, and Hubbard finally wrestled him out to about the 20.
Yeah, and you look at that run and you see good and bad out of that. He broke a tackle. You love that. You got to love the kid breaking that tackle. But the second part you don't like is he should not be chased down by the defenders. Chuba Hubbard is supposed to be faster than that. I don't know if he ran out of gas. I don't know what the reasoning is. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to bust that run to the end zone for 7 points there. And obviously, he did not do this. But, I thought overall, and I wrote notes down, yes, we lost. We talked about the company. I thought on the defensive side of the ball, 2 guys that stuck out to me was defensive end Marcus Haynes, who had a sack, he forced a fumble, and he recovered a fumble that I believe led to a field goal. So great game by him. And then I was really impressed, and I didn't hear much about him from other people, but I thought Jonathan Celestin, 5 tackles, 2 assists, was pretty much all over the place at the linebacker position yesterday. So I was pretty impressed from him. As far as Marshall goes, we talked about him earlier. Let's go ahead and hear from the young kid about his first game in the NFL where he had 3 receptions for 88 yards. Let's hear from Terrace.
Yeah, for a little bit, we still in camp mode right now, and obviously we came out there, had to get in game mode quick. So, just, great experience for me, first game, getting my feet wet. So, looking forward to playing many more games. They've been saying a little bit, chopping it up, but for the most part, it's been number of good things said, so far about. I just got tackled. I did what was best, got close to the sideline, tried to speed it up a little bit, but I got caught. So. I'm just going to keep grinding, each and every day with the team, just taking everything one day at a time, and just keep building off, everything that we got to learn from today. I feel comfortable for the most part, and again, playing football, so, I'm definitely in my element. So, I'm just going to build off today, the experience that I got so far, so, and just try to keep climbing.
What did you think of the speed of the game? Same as college, a little faster?
I say it felt like the same, coming out of the SEC, closest thing to the NFL. So, I mean, I pretty much think it got me prepared, for this level. So, I'm just looking forward, to learning more things, about the NFL as I go along.
I noticed you started in the slot, and then as the game went on, you were inside and outside. Is there a preference? Is there a role you think you want to play a little bit more in the offense this year?
No, sir, no preference. I mean, it's football, you put me anywhere, to make plays, and, I'm going to make that happen. So, just doing, what's best for me and the team, and whatever coach want me to do, I'm going to do it.
And what a great young man. You listen to this guy talk, says all the right things. I will do whatever the coach wants me to do. Those are the type of players that coaches love right there. And, he's going to be a very, very good ball player. He's going to do real well with Moore. He's going to do real good with Robbie Anderson. And then you had Tremble in there that had a tremendous game yesterday. The rookie out of Notre Dame. I was really impressed with him and how he looked. I know we're going versus second, and we all got to remember we're going versus second and third strings players. But, at the same time, guys, this upcoming game, the second game, is going to be very, very important, as we should see a lot of the first-string players playing. But I told you Marcus Haynes had a great, great game on the defensive side of the ball. Let's hear what Marcus had to say about yesterday's defense.
All we talk about was just making sure we improved from last year. I know we were short on sacks and turnovers that really could have helped us progress more in the season. So this year we just worked on more just throwing our fastball, throwing our moves, making sure we gave everything we got just to get to the quarterback. And I feel like a lot of that helped out today.
I see that you guys do a lot of drills where you're punching the ball. I saw a lot of that today. Even for our teammates with guard the ball and whatnot. How much emphasis outside of you guys doing that drill? How much emphasis is that on game? Talk about it.
Oh, it's a lot of emphasis going towards punching the ball. Cause we're trying to get more turnovers than we can get this year. I mean, if we get a turnover, we get the ball back to offense go down and score. I mean, when we start punching the ball more and get more turnovers, it's gonna be a fun season.
We talked about the edge rushers. You often don't get mentioned, but you had a pretty nice season last year. A good day today. What do you think's next for you?
I'm just gonna keep on doing what I do every day. Just go out there, be a hardworking person. I mean, I don't care because I'm not getting mentioned. I'm just gonna keep on doing what I do best, and that's work, grind. That's what I do every day.
What do you think?
Yep, that's what you do every day. And he had a great, great game yesterday. And I'm going to tell you something about this defense. And this is a pesky little defense, and it's going to be a very solid defense. I mean, around the edges, they look very good. If their safeties and CBs can play well this year, this could be a great defensive team. Kind of reminds me of, and everybody knows that I moved over from Tampa Bay, so I got to watch a lot of the Buccaneers, but it reminds me a lot about 2 years ago about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. They weren't quite there yet. They were just about starting to gel, and you got to be patient with this defense. And, last year we started to see glimpses on the Panthers defense of them making some big plays, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. And, he mentioned that they have to give the offense an opportunity to score. Well, when they do give the offense an opportunity to score, they got to score in the red zone. They have to have Sam Darnold perform. And remember, folks, nothing against Sam Darnold. I'm wishing him the best of luck here in Carolina. He played with a team I grew up rooting for, the New York Jets. I lived in New York for 13 years. I got to watch him play. I just wasn't impressed with what he did in New York. And my philosophy, what I was saying to people in Carolina is, you guys cannot yet be high on this guy because he hasn't proven anything yet. when he proves to you that he is a great player, that's one thing. And I think potentially he could be. And I think part of the problem in New York, no doubt about it, was he wasn't under good coaching. And that was my fear. If Matt Rule can't prepare for a game, how the heck are we going to get prepared for, a quarterback prepared for the game? But like I said, I'm going to give Matt Rule the benefit of the doubt. I've only seen him a couple of games now, and the way he acts, the way he mingles, seems like a well-spoken guy. But I have yet to see the leadership from Coach Rule. And that's my opinion. If you disagree with me, please leave comments. But, the big question now to me isn't if you got the right – you have players on this team that right now that give you a chance to win ball games. It is the coach's job to develop and bring out that ability in every single player. Every single player is different. He needs to be able to learn what ticks with each player. By now, he should know that. If he doesn't, he's another year behind the 8 ball. If he does, then we should be able to see some great things. Sam Darnold, has to forget what happened in New York. What happened in New York stays in New York. Okay? He has to come over there and look at this is my chance to prove that I am an elite quarterback or can be an elite quarterback in this league. I told you my opinion. I told you Will Greer as a backup didn't do well. I thought PJ did fine yesterday from a backup perspective. I think people are just over-dramatizing or expected something that isn't there. But PJ will be the backup quarterback on this team unless they go after somebody else towards the end of the preseason. But I do not see that happen. But Sam Darnold is going to have to prove what he can do. And my fear with Sam was that in New York, and I could be wrong, was that he was afraid to get hit. He was afraid to get hit. Remember that one night he said he was seeing ghosts? There was so many people around him. And I'm not saying that he can't stand in the pocket and take some hits, but we have to see him take a couple of hits and see how he responds to that adversity. And once we see that, then we can be going, okay, this is the man we want at the helm of our football team. And I really hope he makes it. I would love to see, because I really think on offense, they are very, very solid with the weapons they have. Quarterback is a question, but that's going to be answered on the offensive line. How much protection are they going to allow this quarterback to do what he is capable of doing and to play to his strengths? And only time is going to tell, but let's go ahead and hear from Coach Rule on what he thought about things from yesterday's preseason game. And now that he had to look at films, let's go ahead and see what he thought about the quarterbacks from yesterday's game.
Matt, good to see you. Just wondered that Troy's injury looked pretty serious yesterday. Is that kind of the early report you're getting back?
He went to the MRI, I think, at 1:30, so waiting to see the severity of the injury right now. Have not heard back from the doctor.
All right. David Newman.
Yeah, Matt, appreciate you doing this today. When you're looking back at film now, any other thoughts on the quarterback play and what stood out there? And I also want to know, do you want to see PJ run more, or is that kind of what you want to see him what he did yesterday do?
Yeah, I think you guys asked me that last night. I think that's part of his gifts, his skill set, so. He can throw from the pocket like he hit Shi Smith down the right sideline, into cover two. Not made, you don't see that throw made very, very often. He can also hurt you with his feet by extending plays, and like the play made to Terrace or by running. So, we'd like to have clean pockets and not have to have him run a ton, but Time when people come out playing 2-man or they're playing robber and they're trying to take what receivers, a real threat is any of our quarterbacks. You go back and look at Sam over the years. Will can certainly run. All three of them have a chance to make plays with their legs is what we want them to do. In terms of the quarterback play, I thought obviously PJ made some really nice throws, some big plays, but there were other plays he left out there that we have to improve upon. Will didn't have quite as many chances. He pushed the ball down the field one time, made a nice throw on the over route. So both guys, I thought, for the first game was good, but not great. We're going to continue to work with them.
All right, next question from Elena Gessenberg.
Hey, Matt. I was wondering if there's any other injury updates just with Matt Caskey, Deontay Brown, and if you're expecting to get anyone back for practice tomorrow.
I don't know if I'll get them back. Really, my main concern is Wednesday against the Ravens. So I'm, kind of touch and go on this. But I think we'll have a couple guys who don't make it to Wednesday. Deontay, he's possible. Caskey, I don't think necessarily that we'll have him back. So, depth up front on the offensive line is going to be a little bit of a concern this week. We lost, Panashuk in practice the other day, and then now Deontay and Caskey going down. That's not ideal.
And then you guys have to be down to 85 by tomorrow at 4. When are you expecting to make those cuts?
Tomorrow.
All right, next question we have Josh Klein.
Hey, Matt, wondering your impressions of Brady Christensen at right tackle and then also at guard from after you watched the film. And then and then also Phil Hoskins on the other side. Sorry. No worries.
I thought Brady did well. We've been really pleased with him all camp. Athletic, he battled. He got beat inside a couple times. That's why he needs these reps. But I thought he did a nice job. Going into guard he has gotten very few reps at guard this camp. I think maybe one day for a couple reps. But him, as I said last night, him and Aaron Montero just had to go figure it out. Based upon the situation with the guys going down in the practice. And so, both guys did a really nice job inside. But Brady, obviously we think he's an option for us at right tackle. And, I think we're pleased with the way he played for game 1.
Next question we'll have from.
Yeah, and he's going to definitely need to be a guy that steps up. I mean, they need him. They need this offensive line. Not to just be solid. People forget that offensive lineman job, whether it's for run blocking, pass blocking, but it's also one of the major responsibilities of linemen is to be disciplined. You gotta be disciplined. And if you're not disciplined, it's going to cost your team points. It's going to cost your team yardage, and you're not going to get first downs. And then your defense is going to be back on the field more than they should be. So, I thought after a first game, there was some good things. There are some things that definitely have to be worked on. You got the next 2 weeks. We got games, I would think, and I'm not sure what the percentage would be, but I would think we'll see Sam this upcoming week. So only time will tell. But ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are enjoying this show, you're new Panther fans, and you're like, wow, I really like to listen to these interviews. And going forward, we're going to be doing a lot more, obviously, football interviews now that football's starting. And I want all of you to go ahead, if you enjoy the show, leave comments, go ahead, go to YouTube, Frankly Speaking Sports, and subscribe. It is completely free, folks. Completely free. You'll get all the updated, shows. You'll get them live. You'll get shows, previous shows. So it's YouTube channel, Frankly Speaking Sports. And then in parentheses, you can follow me on Twitter at Larry Frankus. We keep a lot of news in regards to all different sports. We retweet a lot of information out. Would love to go ahead and have you people be part of our program. Ladies and gentlemen, We are going to be announcing within the next week a new schedule that we will be using. We will get back with you on that. But until next show, ladies and gentlemen, be safe, and we'll see you on the next episode of Frankly Speaking Sports.